Hello everybody, welcome back to my second YouTube tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how I do a dragonfly. Somebody reached out in the comment section and asked for this, so I thought I would give it a go today. You can see the reference I'm using in the corner, but really quick, let me put it up really big on the screen. And now you can pause here and sketch this as your reference if you would like. Currently I'm working on these little section bits that the dragonfly has. Again, don't know the anatomy, so don't know what these are called, but I counted out how many I had and now I'm doing the legs, and I sped up this bit because the sketch and the line art took me, I would say, about 2 hours to do, and I didn't want this video to be that long. You'll see after I finish doing my sketch that I'm going to go in with my micron pen and start doing I do all of the line work. In my last tutorial, I did the line work after I did the painting, and in this one I thought I would show you that if you have waterproof pens, you can totally do the line work first and then just paint over that. Whichever method you prefer doing is the method that you can do. Please remember to have a waterproof pen, otherwise you're gonna get done drawing out your beautiful dragonfly and then the entire thing will smudge and melt away right before your eyes when you add the color. Now my sketch is finished, and you can see I erased a little bit from the eye and took a break to pet my cats because you can totally see cat hair on my nail, so that's great. But I just go over the entire area with my micron pen, and I'm basically going over everywhere that I went with my pencil, and I'm still looking at my reference here, and I'm looking at like where those black marks are in the center of the body, and I'm fully filling those in so I don't have to worry about using darker paint to get like those spots covered later. I know that I said I went everywhere that I went with my pencil, but you're about to see that I didn't go over these leaves. Although at the very end, I decided I didn't like how the leaves looked, just watercolored, so I went over with my marker anyway. So it's up to you if you want to line art your leaves or if you want to just leave them watercolored. Now that my sketch is prepped for my painting, let's get into what colors we're using today. On our palette, we will be adding peacock blue, which is this very lovely blue, and I'm going to show you what all these colors look like, kind of watered out and fully pigmented. And we're also going to be adding some turquoise blue. The next color we'll be adding to our palette is permanent green number 1. And all of these paints I'm using, except the last color, are paints by Fujiko Yuko, or his brand is called Holly Bean. And the reason why your color that is called permanent green might not look the same as my permanent green is because they're made by different people. So just find the colors that you have that match the best if you don't have these exact colors. Now I am adding some emerald green Nova to my palette, And this isn't the palette I'm working on, obviously. I'm just doing some swatches for you guys to see what these colors look like. So please be adding these to your paint palette and not just to your paper like this. I'm also gonna be, well, I don't actually add this color to my palette, but I am doing a swatch of it because we do use this color to mix in with other colors. So I have this cadmium red, and I am using this to kind of, well, you'll see when I get to that point in the video, but I mix it with the greens to make a brown because they are complementary colors, and when you mix complementary colors you get browns or grays, very muddy colors, but it's perfect for this scenario. And I am also adding some Payne's gray so we can darken up our blues when we need to. Last but not least, I'm adding some permanent yellow orange to my palette. You'll notice that these color swatches are sorted in rows from, well, not rows, columns, sorted in columns from left to right. All of the colors on the left are our main colors that we'll be using, and the colors on the right are colors I don't actively have in my pan, but colors that I do mix into these main colors later on. These are the brushes I'll be using today. I am using a size 6 Faber-Castell round brush and using a size 1 Winsor & Newton detail brush. And now I'm taking my kneadable eraser and I'm kneading it a bit, kind of warming it up, and then rolling it over my paper. It's a lot better and less harsh for your watercolor paper to use a kneadable eraser because when you use a regular eraser and you make those eraser strokes, it works away at the texture and grit of your paper, and it deteriorates it. It makes it a lot harder to build up watercolor layers when you've already shredded the grit, the teeth of your paper, if you will, with the eraser. So it's better to use this gentle eraser because it picks up all the unnecessary and unneeded lead, and it doesn't rip your paper. Now I am starting with wetting this first wing back here, and I am wetting down the little section that I see on my reference that is kind of like this dark blue, and I'm going to drop my blue right into there, and this is my peacock blue. I added just a touch of my Payne's gray to this peacock blue so it would make it a little more dark than it actually is, because that's kind of the color tones we're going for here. You'll notice I'm kind of just dotting the pigment and very loosely pulling it. Watercolor has a mind of its own, so you can't really force it to do too much, so you just kind of want to let it do its own thing. I'm going to be taking that leftover pigment on my brush and going under this little wing that we have that goes underneath our top wing. And you notice that instead of wetting it this time, I just went straight on it dry. This is called a wet on dry technique. And I also blotted in some more pigment down so it matches the top. And I'm going to continue to pull this pigment down and make sort of little patterns along with our wing. Now here I'm loading my brush up with even more of that peacock blue that we have with a bit of our Payne's gray. And normally with watercolor you do start from lightest to darkest, but this is actually my second go at this dragonfly because all of my footage got lost of my first attempt, and I didn't like how light the wings turned out on my first attempt, so I'm trying to be more pigment heavy when layering these wings. Now I'm going to be taking a pretty water-soaked brush and getting some Payne's gray, and I'm adding it to the tips of these wings, making sure not to cover where I want to add my yellow bright bits later. But if you notice on the reference, kind of near the ends of these wings, they have a grayish yellow ombre. So I want to make sure I get that gray in, but again, you can see I'm leaving some white space right there where I plan on adding some very bright yellow. And it's important to leave white spaces where you want to add later colors, or even if you just want to keep it white, leave it white and be so careful when painting around it, because once you cover that spot up with watercolor, it is stained. And you can go over it with acrylic marker or white gouache if you prefer, but if you don't want to use any other materials, then please try to avoid your white space. You can see that I've also taken this Payne's gray and I am dotting it kind of in the areas I want darker and in the little blank sections that we had to make a cool little effect. Now I'm taking our same Payne's gray color and I'm adding these kind of 3 little lines here to make sort of that winged pattern once it dries. Now normally, like in my last tutorial, I talked about avoiding hard lines, but this is one of those moments where hard lines will be good for us because it'll create a cool little effect. You can kind of see me think around for a minute with the brush where I want to go with this color, but I have some turquoise blue on my brush and I decided to finish building the wing that I'm working on, which is a good choice. I get kind of distracted when I work on my paintings. I want to work on every area at once, but I'm trying to be more mindful with working on my pieces as a whole in sections versus getting distracted. And I'm adding some of the turquoise while I have it on this other wing as well, because let me just contradict everything I just said. Now our brush has some of our permanent green number 1 on it, and you can see me being indecisive again where I'm gonna place this, but I'm looking at my reference and you can see that now their wings aren't actually green, their wings are see-through and we are seeing the leaves through the wings, so that is what we're adding here and why we're adding the green. And you can see that the green and the turquoise have joined and started going into each other. That's completely fine. These colors can blend. I mean, it's like a very blendy, flowy wing. It'll look completely fine for the colors to merge a bit. And I'm bringing the green down and kind of filling in these blank spaces down here. If you start running out of pigment, you can always add more to your brush. Just be mindful you don't overload and add too much. So I'm gonna swipe up some of this wet green paint up a little bit, and then I'm going to take our peacock blue mixture and I'm going to drag that up and connect it back to the top. Now I'm taking a bit of our emerald green and I'm adding it to this middle section here. Now I'm taking some of our peacock blue that has nothing mixed into it, no gray, and I'm dotting it in this little middle section that was left white to kind of bring back some vibrance and not as dark. And right here in this tiny little section I attempt to do the same, except I do not have enough pigment on my brush and I just kind of end up smearing the other color that was already there. So I blend that back out a bit and add some more of our color and dot that in. Now I am taking my brush with just water on it and I'm kind of blending out these little areas right here that have little kind of white pockets, so we don't have any of our background color popping out of like the white on paper. And now for the second wing, I am going to take my peacock blue, and instead of doing the technique that I did on the other one where I did wet on wet, I'm gonna do wet on dry, and I am dry brushing our peacock blue right onto this wing. Now I am going to brush down this pigment with not adding any more pigment on my brush, just kind of using what's already there to spread it down the rest of the wing. And you can see some of the turquoise got in there and just kind of naturally blending the two. And I'm rubbing all the edges, but I'm still leaving that little spot at the top blank for when we're gonna do the same thing we did with our gray and then eventually our yellow. Next we are going to be going in with our emerald green, and I mixed a little bit of our blue with it, but not very much because I wanted the green to still be the main color focus. And I'm filling in all the spots where I see on the reference that leaf color shines through. Kind of taking a wet brush that has no pigment on it and blending in those little tiny white dots I see. Now I am taking a watered down Payne's Gray and blending it into the tip of this wing. Sorry if you can hear that train that just started to go by. Right now I'm taking a moment to mix some more of my Payne's Gray and Peacock Blue mixture because I was getting pretty low, and it always sucks to run out of paint when you need it in the moment. And moving back to the wing we started on, it is dry now because we've been working on the other areas around it. And we're going to take a very pigment heavy brush filled with our peacock mixture that we just made. And I am going to dot in and kind of try to make this wing texture that this dragonfly has going on. And right about here, my phone died and I didn't acknowledge it until I finished that first wing section. So we're gonna have to go into the second wing to show you exactly what this process looks like. I am so sorry that my phone died. I should have had it on the charger. Learning lesson. I am taking my permanent yellow orange, very watered down, and adding it to the tip of this wing. And you can see that I'm blending it kind of down into that into the Payne's Gray, and I'm also adding a bit more Payne's Gray because I didn't like how light that area looked, and I didn't like the hard edges that ended up drying in the way that they did. So I'm adding some more of the Payne's Gray pigment, and you can see that I rinsed my brush and added more water, and I'm kind of going down to make it less harsh looking and just trying to make it blend into the picture. Right here my brush has no water in it at all, so I can go over and suck up some of that pigment, getting the stain and not getting like as dark of a black. More of the gray color that we want. You probably have noticed that my Payne's grain is a blue kind of Payne's gray. Some Payne's grays from different companies you'll notice are more of like a reddish gray than a bluey gray. I prefer the cool ones to the warm ones. Of course, it depends on what we're painting, but for today's purpose, we prefer the cool ones over the warm ones. I'm wiping off my brush a bit before going back and blending it all back. I want it to blend into the yellow and not look too harsh, and I also want it to blend into the rest of the wing without looking too harsh. And I'm starting to make those stripes that the butterfly has going on in the yellow section. And this is also where I'm going to be adding the yellow to our other wing. Now I'm being kind of gentle to make sure I don't disturb the pigment that's dried too much. I really don't want this mixing into a green. And I also don't want the yellow quite too bright because there are main focuses of yellow that we need to dot in later that will be brighter than all of the rest of the yellow. So this is more of a yellow stain. And right here is where I'm going to add the major dots. Now, I promise we will go back into doing the other wing and you can see the technique that got cut off when my phone died. But as of right now, we are going to take our permanent green and we're going to fill in the body. And you can kind of match the shades that you have mixed with the reference, unless you're using different colors, then you can just go with what you think looks best. But I am going with the green again and adding it down here, and you'll see that once we get to the top little U section, I go in with my turquoise and I slightly stain it. I don't want it too dark, but I also don't want it too light. I just want there to be just enough pigment for it to be that correct color. Also adding the tiny little dots of yellow that I can see this dragonfly has before I wash out this whole little dotted area with a brown-red mix we're going to make soon. And here we are adding our turquoise. I didn't make it too dark, but also not too light, just enough to kind of pop that color that we're looking for. And also make sure you don't touch that yellow that we just added over there so you don't accidentally make it green. Now we're going to do the rest of the body. I'm using our peacock Payne's gray mixture, and I'm kind of filling in everywhere except that little section that we see green kind of peeks through. We'll add our green in later. that whole area is covered, we are going to take our green and we're gonna add it while it's still wet. If you add your second pigment while it's still wet, it'll blend nicely together and it won't make a hard edge. And don't forget this little yellow band they have at the top. Now I'm just going to darken it, add some more pigment. This is still our peacock blue. After feeling if this wing is dry, we can see that's dry enough to work on, and I'm going to go in with my peacock blue, very pigment mixture, and I am going to do the detailing process that cut out last time I was trying to show you. So this second wing is going to be a bit more detailed than the last wing, so I am going in and kind of making little light strokes with my brush. And I'm kind of trying, like, think of an orange. When you look inside of an orange, you can see like all the cell texture. We're kind of going for that same cell texture, so be very almost scribble-like with your brush strokes, scribbly but intentional. And we're also following our guidelines that we made ourselves with the pen work as well, and going kind of in the same direction that the wing stripes go. It's probably not called wing stripes, but again, I don't know the proper anatomy. Now we're going to go in with our turquoise and add a bit back down here so it pops more. And notice I'm doing the same kind of textured like application. I'm not just smearing my brush like we did for the base layer, and I'm going back in where we added the turquoise earlier and adding the same kind of dots to give it that wing-like texture. And I'll do the same with my very pigmented peacock blue mix and just kind of dot it in, and I kind of tap it with my finger to make it blend better as well and kind of pick up some of the pigment. Now we're going back in with our emerald green and adding some more detail, making it dark, because the leaves that the dragonfly are on are going to be pretty light compared to our background blurry leaves, so we're trying to match the color of our background leaves. And I'm going to do the same thing on this other wing. Kind of notice how I'm dry brushing it and it's making a really nice texture. I didn't like how light this yellow dried, so I'm adding a bit more. Next we're going to color in the head, so I'm taking my turquoise and I'm adding it to this first little section, and I'm going to lift it with my brush so it's more of a stain and not that dark because the head is fairly light. I already picked up some pigment, but I'm wiping my brush again and rubbing over once more to pick up even more pigment. And here I'm going to turn my camera to test a new camera angle to see if this works out better. It's really hard to make the camera stay focused on my art and not on my hand while I'm doing the art, so I'm trying to work Now I'm going in on the bottom section of my head with my permanent light green. And again, I don't have very much pigment on my brush. I have mainly water. I'm doing a very light wash. I'm going in at the top of the head with my peacock blue to make it darker. Thank you, thumb, for completely covering that for me. Now I'm rinsing off my brush and picking back up the pigment again, kind of wetting it so it's easier for me to go back over and lighten it. Now I'm kind of wetting this area below the neck. And then I'm going to take a very, very watered down version of my Payne's Gray and just tap it on in there. For this next color, I didn't show myself mixing it because I mixed it during my last tutorial that completely got deleted. But in the middle section of my painter, I have some of that red I told you about mixed with a little bit of Payne's Gray and also a touch of our green. It's a wild combo, but it made this really nice brick-like red that's almost purpley, but not quite purpley, which was perfect for this middle section. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of our peacock blue into that mixture to make it actually more purple, and I'm going to add little dots of this purple color here and there, and then I'm going to clean my brush, dry it, and I'm going to very gently tap in certain sections where I want it to be lighter, and then that will be the end of our little dragonfly body for the back part at least. Next, let's fill in their little, I think this is where they pinch you, maybe? I don't know. I know dragonflies can bite you. I don't know if this is their pincher or if they just have these things. Again, I'm not a dragonfly expert or know anything about their anatomy. I want to ensure that my head stain is dry before I work on the eye, so just to give it some extra time, I am going to work on the leaves that the dragonfly is currently resting on. I am taking my brush, and I have a pretty water/pigment heavy brush, and I am going in and tracing the outline of this leaf. Now that the outline is done, I'm going to fill it in, and I'm rinsing my brush, drying it off, and then dragging that pigment throughout it. Now, I don't exactly know why I'm avoiding the legs while painting this because they are waterproof pens. I don't need to be doing this. I think it's just a force of habit of not wanting to touch the ink with paint out of fear it's gonna smear, even though I know it's not going to. You'll see while I'm working on this leaf, I eventually realize, why am I even doing this? I can just go over them, and I start doing that. Now I'm going to clean my brush and dry it off and soak up some of this pigment so it's not as harsh, or I guess, I don't know how you would describe it, childlike looking. It looked very pigment heavy, so I'm going to blend out some of this and make it more leaf looking. You can see we're using the hard edge to sort of an advantage here because it made a natural leaf line for us. Now I'm going to take some of my yellow and I'm going to stripe it in there, kind of creating where that leaf fold is going to be. Go in with our permanent green again and do the same thing for the leaf that's right under this one. And I also fixed the shape of this leaf because I was looking at the reference and realized it kind of goes in between these legs, so I messed it up. But leaves can look like anything you want them to look like, man. Going into our third and final leaf. You want to be careful when you're doing this one that you don't accidentally disturb the paint that's dried on the tail of the dragonfly. So be very careful when you're going around those edges, especially the parts we want to keep white at the very end. I'm going in with my emerald green and kind of trying to create those same shadings that this leaf has in our reference. And I'm also taking some more of my pigmented light green, and I am just kind of going over the leaf shape again. Sure to blend everything out with the water so it doesn't look too choppy and kind of keeps that loose feel that we're going for. Now that we have our leaves placed, we're gonna go in and do the eyeball, and I'm taking that same red mixture that I made for the back of the dragonfly's body, and I'm filling in everywhere except this section at the top, and then I'm wetting and wiping my brush and then blending it out to create this ombre, much like the dragonfly's eye has. Again, remember that if there are parts you want to keep white, be very careful when you're working your pigment around it and keep those spots white. I added a drop of the pigment to make it darker, and I'm going to take my tiny detail brush and make even more of a circle. Now I'm I'm gonna take my micron again and I'm gonna fill in this little antenna that I didn't fill in all the way. I was thinking I was gonna paint it, but no, I'm not gonna paint it. I should just ink it. Now while things are drying, I'm going to add in some shimmers. If you guys don't have shimmers, you could experiment with using some eyeshadows. That might work, or even like sparkly clear nail polish if you have that. Don't mind the cat hairs that are in the top of this container. If you own cats, their hair is just kind of a part of you at this point. I'm going to dot the matching sparkly colors. I'm matching these shades as best as I can. I'm just kind of looking at my sparkly palette and thinking which of these look most like turquoise and which of these look most like my peacock blue. And I'm doing very, very little dots of them and where we added those colors. So when the sun hits those spots, I can speak, I swear. When the sun hits those spots, it'll shine very cool and it'll look like the sort of like orangey texture that we were talking about that their wings have. Here I accidentally dropped my palette and one of the colors came out. These colors do pop out pretty easily, but they are very beautiful. I will put the link in the description where I ordered these from off of Etsy. Now I'm also going to make the body shimmery. So I'm going in with this nice blue shimmer. And I'm going to add this blue shimmer pretty pigmented on the bottom, and then I'm going to wipe my brush and kind of blend it into the body. So I'm drying my brush off in between doing this so it looks more natural. And now I'm taking a little bit of green and adding it where our green is. And I think that looks really nice. And next I want to make this eyeball darker, so I'm going to take my pigment that I used for it once again and sort of go over the whole thing, kind of undoing what we just did, but then I'm going to tap in some more pigment at the very, very bottom to make it even darker. And then I think that's pretty perfect. I am wetting my brush and wiping it a bit and then blending out that little white spot once again just so it looks more smooth right there. Now that our leaves are dry, I'm going to be adding more details. I'll be swapping between our emerald green and our permanent light green. That's the nice thing about having a limited palette. You always know what colors are going to be what colors because you aren't working with a bunch of them. I'm gonna take some of that red mixture and very lightly stroke it to kind of make it look like a brown mixed in with our green, and then I'm gonna take a little bit of our yellow and boop, just put a little bit right there. Finally, I'm adding little yellow highlights at the tips of these leaves. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and let this dry and then we can do our background. Okay, everything is dry now and I'm gonna go ahead and wet the entire background. So I'm going to be going around our subject. You'll see that I leave like a very thin space between our painting and the wet wash that I'm doing, and that's so that our painting doesn't bleed into the wash. And you'll see that I just dropped water right on the painting and I had to pause and dry it and redo all of that. So that's what I'm doing here. Now that the paper is all wet, I am taking a mixture of the peacock blue with our emerald green, and you can see it's more green heavy than blue heavy, but still a blue green. And the goal for this background is for it to be darker than our main subject. So as long as your blurry leaves are darker than our main leaves, it's totally fine what colors you use. I would still try to use the colors though that you used in your main leaves, so it does actually look like it's a part of the same plant and the same tree. Because we wetted the paper before doing this, it makes it a lot easier for the paint to spread on its own, and it's also easier for us to work on the background without it drying super fast. Next, I'm taking some of our permanent green and mixed with a little bit of the peacock blue once again, and I'm going to just kind of swirl it here and there. You'll see that before this dries, I do add dots of water to kind of create the same, well, it doesn't create exactly that water droplet. Well, they're not water droplets. I would say it's unfocused camera droplets. But it does create a cool effect. Just not quite that same droplet effect that we have in our reference. You'll see as I get closer to the edge of our painting, I kind of can creep in and shape it out with the pigment, which is a lot easier and doesn't make the pigment blend as if I were to just be painting that with water. Then it would be seeping out into the water. Here I am loading my brush up with water and dropping it into random spots on the background, and it will create a cool little water bloom, which normally water blooms are really annoying when they appear in art, but not when they're purposeful. dragonfly is all done. I cut mine out. This is what it looks like. This is where I decided to trace the outline of my leaves because I didn't really like how they looked almost blending into the background. I wanted them to be more of a focus as a part of the main piece versus blending in with our loose background. And here is our dragonfly all complete. I hope you guys enjoyed my second YouTube tutorial. Please comment down below what you would like to see next. Somebody said that they would like to see some woodland creatures, so I'll definitely be doing some more nature creatures, but let me know any other ideas you have. Have a nice day. Bye.